Music producers, if you have ever watched me cook up a beat in one of my live sessions on YouTube, you know your friend has a bit of an unorthodox process. Many times I start my beats off in, I guess, a controversial way in a producer community by using a pre-made loop, usually a drum loop. What producers don't realize is that this is important towards me getting some of those initial ideas out from my head and into my DAW. What's crazy about those drum loops is sometimes they don't even match the genre of the beat that I'm working on. The arrangement is all over the place and the beat just doesn't seem to have much promise in the beginning. To put it bluntly, it looked like a hot ass mess. But for some reason, no matter where I'm at within the process, you always see me smiling. You see me aggressively bobbing my head to the music and yelling out crazy reactions and words and ad-libs and voxes like, oh, damn, hey, I get it. I almost sound like a Lil Jon soundboard. Nobody really knows this, but the reason that I can keep my energy so high regardless of the obstacle in front of me is the same reason that I can tap into my producer flow state whenever I want. By the end of today's video, you will have access to the biggest gem that I have for achieving the same results for yourself. So before we get into that, let's recap on the last two videos. I talked to you first about my problem with certain music producers that teach you overcomplicated beat making methods to purposely confuse you, and how it unfortunately doesn't bring you any closer to achieving peak enjoyment when making and mixing your music, no matter how technical or how sound the terminology is. In the second video, we also discussed the power of something called the 10-minute beat challenge and how it helps to train our brains on a neurological level to stop the overthinking and stop that inner chitter chatter that stops us from getting in our flow state. Shut up. This approach will not only help you get your ideas into FL Studio faster, but it will allow you the space to come back and perfect your ideas later on. As music producers, we have two primary roles that we play when we're making beats. The first role, we're gonna call him the artist. And the second role, we're gonna call that person the scientist. Simply put, the artist is responsible for tapping into our raw and most pure emotions and our pure creativity as a producer, and a scientist is responsible for the more technical side of things like mixing and arrangement. In our best beats, the role of the artist is to lay down the raw foundation of the beat. This includes creating our most rawest and sometimes offbeat drum patterns and recording chords directly into our piano roll. No second or third takes, just laying it down. The artist is focused on capturing the pure essence of the idea we hear inside of our heads. The artist is like a kid or a producer that just doesn't know any better. And if you think back to you as a kid, you were not scared to take risks most times, right? You didn't give a damn about making mistakes or following certain rules or what it meant to be anything except for a kid. When we're making our best beats, this is when the scientist comes in like a parent and applies structure and order to some of those raw ideas and the raw behaviors of the kid. You got to think of the scientist as being in charge of more analytical and detailed decisions related to the mix and structure of your beat. But don't get me wrong, both roles are very crucial to us as music producers. But both roles have a specific place and time within our process that they need to show up. Producers, tell me if this scenario sounds familiar. You're working on a beat, right? You find a fire instrument. You lay down a pretty good melody and you add some pretty dope drums. And then out of nowhere, you hear a sound that's clashing with that 808 and it's annoying the living shit out of you. Oh my gosh. It's annoying you so badly that you have to stop the music and solo every sound with the 808 to figure out what frequency you need to EQ out of the mix. You figure out that it's this synth bell that you can't quite take out or replace because it would change the entire vibe of the beat. You struggle so much to get it right on the mixing end that you minimize your screen, turn the beat off, and start searching for tips, mixing tips on YouTube to help you fix it. After watching a handful of videos, you finally find some decent information and you apply it to your mix. Only problem is now you feel like you're starting to lose that initial vibe and initial energy you were going for when you took that short break. Has this happened to you? I know it's happened to you because it happens to every freaking music producer. This is what happens, I feel, when the artists and the scientists are attempting to cook at the same time. This ain't Chop, fam. Get out my kitchen. Other ways that the scientist comes and starts to mess around with the brain of the artist is they say things like, if you are a real producer, you wouldn't have to add loops to your beats there. If you're using Scalar to find chords, that's kind of cheating as a music producer. Just learn music theory, bro. You know what's crazy? I was once that guy. I was a music producer purist. I think I was pissed off at the young guys, the young producers for having more tools and cheat codes than I had coming up. I was so convinced that these cheat codes would be the beginning of the end of the music I love, like it was some kind of music theory apocalypse. I felt like I had to make everything from scratch myself, or my validity as a producer was out the window and on the line. My inner scientist, and I guess more importantly my ego, used to make beat making and mixing so complex and limited by rules that there was little to no room for me to actually enjoy the music I was making. No matter what, the music I created as an artist was being micromanaged by this voice called my inner scientist. As we talked about in my last video, the inner critic has a name called the prefrontal cortex, aka the part of your brain we need to make logical decisions, but also the part of the brain we need to shut down and silence if we are ever to achieve our flow state. The biggest gem that I can give you right now as a music producer is if you want to achieve happiness over frustration, every single time you sit down to make beats, you must find a way to be present in the moment. You must find a way to take on challenges that are only one step above your skill level. This is why I asked you to do the 10-minute beat challenge in the last video. It's something that's really attainable for anybody making beats. You see, that challenge is so important because it forces you to make decisions without thinking. If you want to achieve maximum levels of enjoyment while making music, you have to have the courage to kick the scientist's ass out of your session until your initial ideas are recorded, and then they can come back. I want you to think about something. How is it that someone like myself, who doesn't know every detail of music theory, can only really play by ear, yet I'm able to compose these cinematic and really emotional melodies that feel like they were made by a live musician? How is that possible? How is it that I'm not the most well-versed or even the most technical on the end of mixing, but I'm able to achieve such clarity with my beats, such presence that drives an emotional reaction out of my listener? If you want to know what the answer to that question is, I can give it to you in 2 words: action and emotion. What you got to understand is that when I sit down to make a beat and I lay down an instrument, I literally do not care if that instrument is off beat, out of key, too loud, distorting, or structured weird, as long as it emotionally gets my point across first. Oh, that's music blasphemy. In addition to that, I'm also obsessed with the word action. If I spend an unnecessary amount of time trying to perfectly quantize my drums or pick the perfect Omnisphere preset for my chord progressions, I lose my opportunity at achieving my flow state by allowing the scientist to come into the process way too early. Now, don't get me wrong. I know I've been clowning the scientist, and the scientist kind of sounds like a jerk, but the scientist is important too. But he has literally nothing of value to provide your beat unless you allow the artist to run free with ideas and inevitably get into the flow state first. Now, what types of things do I do on a practical level that helps me achieve my flow state while I'm in that quote-unquote artist mode? Neuroscientists say that it takes about 30 minutes of focused work before we can reach our flow state. In my experience, I've actually witnessed something special that happens to us as music producers within the first 10 minutes of cooking up a beat. In those first 10 minutes, we literally catch lightning in a bottle. Now, on a practical level, this is why I use shortcuts in my first 10 minutes, such as drum loops and melody loops. They were created by other producers to help music producers use them. Using these loops in that small window of time helps to support my creativity when I'm focused or hyper-focused on one particular sound, like maybe a fire melody that I'm working on. Instead of spending extra minutes trying to figure out chord progressions, knowing very well I'm not a pianist or that I'm not traditionally trained in piano, I use plugins like Scalar and Captain Chords that were literally made for me to travel faster into my flow state. To me, if you're going to use shortcuts or even call them cheat codes, this is the proper way to use them. As long as you don't rely on them so heavy that they create lazy habits, this is the biggest way that they can help you get into your flow state. After you have used these tools that I have outlined to help build the momentum, the initial momentum, you can then allow the scientist to come in and start to move some things around. Every time I sit down and make a beat, I say this mantra to myself: I am nothing, I am nobody, and therefore that makes me capable of doing anything. What does that mean? That means all those reservations I had about using loops and using certain plugins, they gotta go out the window. I am nothing, I am nobody. That makes me capable of doing anything. You gotta understand, this is powerful for me because I know how loud the negative voice inside my head once was. I remember how much that voice doubted my skills as a beat maker. You know, I know how loudly that voice talked about my biggest insecurities as a producer that some of you probably wouldn't even knew existed. Fam, I remember that voice so vividly. The peak enjoyment method, though, gave me a way to silence that voice every time I made a beat. You want to know the reason why I do so much yelling out loud when I'm making beats and it sounds like I'm just yelling out random boxes? I never said this before, but the reason I yell out encouraging words and reactions is because it quiets the negative voice inside my head. My logic is if I can yell louder than the voice inside my head, that amplification is going to shut down that other voice inside my head. Now, because of that, you hardly ever see me exhaling with anger because something went wrong with my computer. I do things that activate me, right? They activate me on a physical level, things like clapping, yelling. I mean, I start yelling out random things like, let's go, baby. No computer has ever defeated me. Bring it on. Now, I know this can be a little bit much for some of you producer personalities out there that are like, I'm not doing all of that. That is extra and it's corny. I get it, but this is literally the foundation behind how I can achieve peak enjoyment when I'm making music. I meet so many talented producers that can produce literally circles around me, but there's something in their eyes that says they don't love making music anymore. Somewhere between, I guess, the politics of the business perhaps, or the responsibility to become an influencer has caused them to lose touch with the part of making music that made them fall in love with this to begin with. Man, seeing the peak enjoyment method literally flip that around for them in a short period of time is by far one of the most amazing feelings I could ever have as a teacher and fellow producer. So with that said, I have another homework assignment for you the next time you sit down and make a beat. I want you to make a promise that you're going to sit down from minute 1 to minute 15 and you will do whatever is necessary for you to make a beat without stopping the beat. Do not stop the beat at all. Keep it looping around. If that means starting a beat off with the rhythm that's inside your head, I want you to record that rhythm using your MIDI keyboard live. I don't want you to stop the beat for any reason. I want you to challenge yourself, but not for the sake of trying to frustrate you. I want you to come out of your comfort zone so that you can have fun again. You're not gonna have fun unless you come out of your comfort zone. Also, special message for those of you that feel like some of the things that I'm suggesting compromises your morals as a producer. I want you to get the stick out of your ass. That is your assignment. In a less vulgar way, all I'm asking is for you to allow the artist within you the space and opportunity to cook without the scientist even coming into the kitchen in that first 15 minutes. If you achieve this separation and you want to go longer, fam, do it. I just want you to promise me, more so than anything else, that you will do more and think less. Because after all, when we think too much while making and mixing our beats, it's literally the kryptonite to our flow state. Now, I know this approach to beat making and mixing is not for everyone, especially after today. For some people, they're like, this is just not for me. And I respect that. But if you enjoy this type of information, you are going to love my Music Producer Power course. I'll be launching the course in the next few days. So as you're knocking out these homework assignments, I definitely want you to keep an eye out for it. So if you have not signed up for the early bird list, go down to the description below because it will not be open forever and it is filling up by the day. This will undoubtedly be the best course in training that I have ever put together for you, especially for my FL gang. Hey, gang. For those of you that are serious about achieving your peak enjoyment, you are definitely not going to want to miss this. Now, in the next video, I'm super hyped to actually lay this entire game plan out for you. I'm going to show you step by step what you'll need to do to start implementing the peak enjoyment method today. So definitely sign up to the early bird list because they are getting these videos ASAP before anybody else. And so, as I always say, thank you for watching today's video. Have a good one.